Welcome to a new episode of Out from the Horrorbox. I'm your scary host, Dom, and in this episode we get into some new horror movies that are upcoming, more cryptids, and some terrifying tales. But before we jump in, I just want to speak about the recent strikes that are happening. A couple months ago, the WGA, which is the writers' union, went on strike, and just recently SAG, the actors' union, went on strike and has caused the whole of Hollywood and the studio productions to come to a screeching halt. There has been many problems with the studios in the last 17 years since the last strike for at least the writers. And streaming and AI are completely changing the landscape for better or worse, but people still need to be taken into account. We're living through this new Gilded Age, and these multi-million and billionaires are trying to wring out the pennies of a quickly dwindling middle class. This is happening across all sectors, and workers will only put up for it for so long. We all need to stand up to them now, because trying to live off cents and having no health care is not working for people, especially since the economy used to work for most everyone. Writers can go months without a job, and they need the residuals from the work and unique content that they create. Maybe if these rich asshats kept the yachts that they have and not buy another one to match with their personal jets, we could spread the wealth around in a true trickle-down economy. They have so much money now. If they took a pay cut of even a third, we could get this resolved. I don't see how hard it is to guarantee that they won't lose their health insurance or worry if they can pay their rent. I think we need a complete overhaul of who has power in this country. We need to unite and demand better. Anybody who is crossing the picket line or siding with the studios are on the wrong side of history. Hopefully everyone keeps up the pressure and the writers get what they rightfully deserve.
This is the fucking news.
Now let's move on to some spooky news, some movies that are coming up that I just want to kind of touch on. Not really get too much into, but I just want to talk about them a little bit. First up, we have Pet Sematary Bloodlines. I didn't even know this movie was coming out, let alone in production. Pet Sematary Bloodlines will premiere on Paramount Plus this Halloween. The film is going to be a prequel. Here's the synopsis. In 1969, a young Judd Crandall has dreams of leaving his hometown of Ludlow, Maine, but soon discovers sinister secrets buried within and is forced to confront a dark family history that will forever keep him connected to Ludlow. Banding together, Judd and his childhood friends must fight an ancient evil that has gripped Ludlow since its founding, and once unearthed, has the power to destroy everything in its path. Yeah, so just looking at the photos that they released, looks pretty okay. I haven't seen anything on Paramount Plus yet that I know of. I mean, I've watched things through the app, but it was actually from Showtime, so I never really watched anything on Paramount Plus. So I've yet to see if they have anything of quality. But I know that they had the Twilight Zone. And then they've done a bunch of Star Trek series that they got on there, so, and a lot of people like those, and I mean from what I've seen, the quality looks pretty good, so hopefully it's pretty good. I'll just have to wait and see before I pass any kind of judgment, because like I said, it looks pretty okay, and it's got Pam Grier and David Duchovny. Both actors are pretty solid. I mean, I love Jackie Brown. I love the X-Files, and I mean his small part in Zoolander's hilarious, and even in Twin Peaks, David Duchovny does a pretty good job. It's going to be interesting because most sequel films to Stephen King's adaptations are usually not good. Dr. Sleep is amazing. It's a great. I can't wait to talk about that in a later film, but that's also because it's kind of based off of a novel. it is its own novel as the source, but Mike Flanagan kind of mixed. He kind of made a hybrid sequel where it was an adaptation of the novel, but it was also a sequel to the movie. Like, he bridged that really well. But other than that, like Carrie 2, The Rage, or even Pet Sematary 2, didn't do really well. And anytime you do like these kind of sequels that aren't like more approved, or they don't actually exist as novels, usually don't pan out really well. And that's why I kind of cross my fingers that hopefully maybe they might do something good with this, right? Sometimes they do make a sequel or like a prequel. Like I heard Ouija, the prequel to the Ouija movie, that one was pretty good. But I think that's Mike Flanagan, isn't it? And so, I mean, if you have the right people, you got the right writers, directors, you can do something really good. If you're just trying to make something to make money, usually that's when it's like... And so I'll just have to wait and watch it, and it'll be something good to watch, something spooky in that spooky season. Moving on to A Haunting in Venice. Coming in September, the third installment in the Chupacabra series. After Murder on the Orient Express and Death on the Nile, we get a huge tonal shift in A Haunting in Venice. From what I'm seeing in this trailer, we see Kenneth Branagh in eerie post-World War II Venice on All Hallows Eve. Now retired and living in self-imposed exile, Poirot reluctantly attends a seance at a decaying haunted palazzo. When one of the guests is murdered, the detective is thrust into a sinister world of shadows and secrets. Kenneth Branagh said, "This is a fantastic development of the character Hercule Poirot, as well as the Agatha Christie franchise. Based on a complex, little-known tale of mystery set at Halloween in a pictorially ravishing city, it is an amazing opportunity for us as filmmakers that we are relishing the chance to deliver something truly spine-chilling for our loyal movie audiences," as one Mr. Branagh always does. Very Shakespearean. Starring alongside Branagh is Tina Fey, Jamie Dornan, and recent Academy Award winner Michelle Yeoh. They will be loosely adapting Agatha Christie's Halloween Party, and I think this could be good. I didn't see Death on the Nile, but I mean, I can always watch that. I can catch up. I really like the adaptation of Murder on the Orient Express. The novel is one of my favorite novels of all time. I loved it so much when I first read it. During the first time seeing the trailer, I was taken aback by the shift in tone because I didn't think it was going to be related to the other films. I thought at first, I was like, oh, it's another Hercule Poirot movie because it's Kenneth Branagh, and that's what I assumed. But then it said A Haunting in Venice, and like the way that they present it is very much like kind of like the other, like A Haunting in Connecticut, A Haunting in Massachusetts, A Haunting in California, those ones. So I could totally see it being something ridiculous like that. But then later I found out that reading like an article about it, I was like, oh, this is the third one in the series, and it's based off of, I don't know what, I think because it doesn't have like the same story as Halloween Party. Maybe that's why they decided to change, because it is very loosely adapting that novel by Agatha Christie. So that's why I'm thinking they decided to change it to A Haunting in Venice. But yeah, the shift in tone, at least from the trailer, the way the trailer portrays it is like, it's like a ghost movie, like something spooky is happening, like, like like actual like paranormal things are happening, the supernatural's there. But I think if they're going the way I'm thinking, I think it could work. There's a way that I'm thinking like, okay, it could probably be this in my head, knowing like other like plots and like reading other things where they say it's like a true like ghost story. Well, not true in the sense of like it really happened in real life, but true to the characters. So we'll I mean, again, we'll just have to wait and see. But I mean, this is one that I'm looking forward to now. And it will help you get in that spooky mood because it comes out in September, which I count as pre-Halloween. All of September is pre-Halloween, and so you can start getting into that spooky mood. So we only got a little while left, about a month till pre-Halloween starts, so that we can get into that like very spooky mood. Next up, we get our first look at Larry Fassenden's Blackout, which follows a small town artist Charlie, who's played by Alex Hurt, a tortured man whose drinking binges blur with a sneaking suspicion that he might likely be a werewolf. He distances himself from those he loves and sinks deeper into solitude. His flashes of memory of his nighttime grisly acts manifest through his artwork. Blackout is the third film in Fassenden's monster trilogy after Habit, which is about vampires, and Depraved, an adaptation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Blackout is going to focus on werewolves, and from the stills that I've seen, it looks pretty good. I love werewolf films, and I don't think they get enough really like solid films. There's American Werewolf in London, Dog Soldiers, The Wolfman, I mean the original one, maybe like Ginger Snaps. Honestly, on my personal list, I put Curse on there. I did a review of Cursed. You can go back and listen to that, but I loved Cursed. But, you know, there's also just a bunch out there that, you know, aren't like not that great. I've seen that are just like they kind of fall short, or they're like okay, but they're not too memorable. As of right now, it's like in a film festival. I forget which one. So it doesn't have a set wide release date or even just a release at all, even if it's limited. But once it does get one, I'm definitely going to be checking that out. And I want to go back and watch some of his. I read about Habit and I read about Depraved, and I was like, ooh, these sound pretty good. I know he shot Habit a while back, a while further. Depraved was a little bit more recent, but I do want to go back. I think Depraved is available on something I got, but I'll have to really go and check out these ones. They sound pretty good. I heard that they're pretty good. I didn't even know he was a director. I've seen him in a few things here and there. He was in Session 9, which is one of my favorite horror films of all time. Session 9 is so good. I remember when I saw that one. I can't wait. I want to review that one later. But, yeah, honestly, you know, from just seeing the stills and seeing what he did with and reading from what he did with the other ones, his other films, yeah, gotta check it out. Okay, coming up in October, we have Dear David from Lionsgate and BuzzFeed. The film is based on the BuzzFeed article originally posted on August 7th, 2017 by popular cartoonist Adam Ellis. He started to tweet the story of how a dead child is haunting his apartment and is trying to kill him. His first tweet gained over 55,000 retweets and 76,000 likes. Ellis originally tweeted, "My apartment is currently being haunted by the ghost of a dead child. He's trying to kill me." The tweet became a thread documenting the alleged haunting. The film is about shortly after comic artist Adam, who's played by Augustus Peru, responds to internet trolls. He begins experiencing sleep paralysis while an empty rocking chair moves in the corner of his apartment. As he chronicles increasingly malevolent occurrences and a series of tweets, Adam begins to believe that he is being haunted by the ghost of a dead child named David. Encouraged by his boss to continue the Dear David thread, Adam starts to lose his grip on what is online and what is real. And it's based on that thread that was on Twitter. I kind of remember seeing the thread on Twitter, but not really. And from watching the trailer, I really don't think I'm going to check this one out. I've seen BuzzFeed's YouTube videos, and this kind of looks like a jazzed up version of that. Like, they maybe spent a little bit more on the budget, but it's just like, I don't know. The story just is kind of like meh. So he like invents a story, and then the ghost is materializing. What is it? Ooh. I think I've seen things like a movie like this done like better. Like I don't know. They're just, from what I've seen in the trailer, it just doesn't look that great. It looks like it could be one that could go easily to like YouTube or like a Tubi or something. Although Tubi's really stepped up their game, but like, something that like not like a Netflix or anything like that, or Apple Plus, but like this is just some like random movie that comes out. Like I would almost compare it to like Play With Me, but that movie wasn't too bad. I think they did that one pretty good. There's some spooky parts in that one, but honestly, I don't know if you really should. If you want to watch it, go ahead. It just, to me, this just does not sound interesting. And those are just a couple of films coming up, so look out for them if you want some spookies for Halloween this season. And you remember, Halloween's coming up fast. There are so many strange things out there. UFOs and lights in the sky, ghostly figures haunting the places we call home. Something out in the dark that goes bump in the night. What has always intrigued me is that cryptids are seen all over the world. They have been a part of folklore, a local legend, and even the stories we tell ourselves to stay calm when we hear something just past the light. Are these undiscovered animals, extraterrestrials, interdimensional beings? Only time will tell what will be discovered. In this continuation of our series on cryptids across the US, we start on the island of Puerto Rico and head back to the southwest, then trek up to Iowa, travel back to Kentucky, check out the forests of Washington State, and end in Wisconsin. In March 1995, 8 sheep were discovered dead in Puerto Rico. Each one had 3 punctured wounds in the chest area and reportedly completely drained of blood. A few months later, in August, an eyewitness named Madeline Tolentino reported seeing the creature in the Puerto Rican town of Canovanas, where as many as 150 farm animals and pets were reportedly killed. Puerto Rican comedian and entrepreneur Silverio Perez is credited with coining the term Chupacabras soon after the first incidents were reported in the press. Shortly after the first reported incidents in Puerto Rico, other animal deaths were reported in other countries, such as Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, the Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Honduras, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Peru, and the United States. In October and December 2018, there came many reports of suspected chupacabras in Manipur, India. Many domestic animals and poultry were killed in a suspicious manner similar to other chupacabra attacks, and several people reported that they had seen chupacabras. However, forensic experts said that the street dogs were responsible for the mass killings of these domestic animals and poultry after they kind of studied the corpses. The chupacabra, or chupacabras, literally means goat sucker. In Spanish, chupa means suck, and cabras is goats. He's a cryptid of folklore, a part of the, obviously from like Puerto Rico, and then a lot of times he's seen in the southwestern region of the United States, but there the physical depictions kind of vary. So the most common description of the chupacabra The one that's seen in Puerto Rico is like a reptile-like creature that's said to have leathery or scaly greenish-gray skin with spines or quills that are running down its back. It's supposedly about 3 to 4 feet high, and kind of stands with its hands kind of clawed and kind of like a T-Rex kind of like position, and it's supposed to hop kind of like a kangaroo. And that's completely different from its description in here in the Southwest, in like Texas, and I think sometimes in New Mexico. I don't know if there's really been too much here in Arizona. Maybe some like in like Colorado. I'm not sure how far beyond like the Southwest it is supposed to be, but that description is kind of like a wild dog, kind of hairless with a pronounced spinal ridge, usually pronounced eye sockets, fangs, and claws, and it's said to. But it has the same, I guess, description of draining all the blood from the animals and sometimes the organs. Usually 3 holes in the shape of downward pointing triangle, but sometimes only 1 or 2 holes. Chupacabra is a relatively new cryptid, having really only started popping up since about 1995 in Puerto Rico. But he's been, reported as far as north as Maine, far south as Chile, outside in like Russia and the Philippines. But these are all anecdotal and are lacking evidence or uncorroborated. Sightings in North Mexico and the southern United States have been verified to have been like canids with mange, because there's been a lot where they claim that they caught one, or they have one, or they found the remains, but those have just been the remains of dogs or wild dogs. They got mange and they just lost a lot of the hair, but there has been like many reports of just them they come in, they attack the animals. There's one video that I've seen where like they're filming and like there's supposedly this thing, and like it's like a black blob kind of shape, like it maybe like it's hanging on to like the goat, and like it kind of drops off and scurries away, and it's like kind of like, okay, if you're faking this, how are you doing it? I want to know, because it's kind of like when they tried to like prove like the Fresno night crawlers, like every test they tried, just like it didn't disprove it. Like they were kind of like, how did you do, you guys? How did it do it? If this is fake, how did you do it? But after a 5-year investigation by Benjamin Radford, he documented in his 2011 book Tracking the Chupacabra that the description given by the original eyewitnesses in Puerto Rico, Madeline Tolentino, was based on the creature Syl in the 1995 science fiction horror film Species. The alien creature Syl is nearly identical to her eyewitness account, and she even saw the film right before. And she said it was a creature that looked like the Chupacabra with spines on its back and all. The resemblance to the Chupacabra was really impressive. That's what Tolentino reported. And Radford revealed that Tolentino believed that the creature and the events that she saw in Species were happening in reality in Puerto Rico at the time, and therefore concluded that the most important Chupacabra description cannot be trusted. This, Radford believes, seriously undermines the credibility of the Chupacabra as a real animal. Chupacabra, ever since it came into existence through these, whether you want to say that they're fake or a hoax, these misidentifications of either like dogs, or this woman who she saw a movie and was mistaken, whatever. Though, like I said, there have been other cases along with that, and plus it's just entered into the zeitgeist. And I would say Chupacabra is probably like one of the most well-known cryptids out of all these, even though for being so new, I think because it was towards the early stages of the internet that this kind of really helped to spread this around, this idea of like, ooh, there's this thing in either in Puerto Rico or in Latin America that it's killing these goats. It's eating and drinking their blood. It's killing these animals. It's like people are seeing it everywhere, and it causes like this mass hysteria. And I love it. I love that the Chupacabra, not the deaths of these animals, but that this newer kind of cryptid could break in and kind of take over and be like, look at, like, I'm here, maybe. And like it would just be great to see something like that, and like just from all the different accounts that I've heard of it, and just kind of the varying, like they've always kind of been about the same, like the hunched over kind of kangaroo-esque, scaly skin, but then you also get like that dog kind of wild dog-ish version. But either way, like I've always loved Chupacabra since like it came to be. And I remember being a kid and hearing about it and like, wondering what could it be. And yeah, so hopefully we were able to, maybe it is something. Maybe it's something that, the government was experimenting on. That's what a lot of people think, because it was near some like government bases and government places. Because Puerto Rico is a commonwealth of the United States. All its citizens are United States citizens. So, like the United States has probably a heavy influence there in their bases, so you never know. Like maybe they were experimenting on something and something got out. Van Meter, Iowa is a small town in the Des Moines metropolitan area that had a population of just over 400 in 1903. During that time, it may have also been home to a demon. It was the fall of 1903, and several of Van Meter's most prominent men were about to encounter a strange sight. A monster that came... Van Meter, Iowa is a small town in the Des Moines metropolitan area that had a population of just over 400 in 1903. During that time, it may also have been home to a demon. On the night of September 29th, a farm implement salesman named U.G. Griffith was returning late from his rounds when he saw something odd. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and the town of Van Meter had long since gone to bed. Nothing was stirring. Then Mr. Griffith saw a light burning on top of the two-story Mather and Greg's building on Main Street. The light was so bright it was like a beacon. Mr. Griffith drew closer to investigate, and as he did so, the light jumped across the street and landed on top of another building. Mr. Griffith was astounded. He thought, what could it be? He took a couple steps closer, and the light abruptly vanished. The following night of the 30th, the local doctor, Dr. Alcott, was awoken in his bed in his office. It was a bright light shining on his face. Dr. Alcott grabbed his gun and went out to investigate. Atop the building across the street was a creature with bat-like wings and a single horn in the middle of its forehead, emitting a blinding light. He fired 5 shots and the creature vanished. Continuing into the next 2 nights, Peter Dunn, a banker, O.V. White, a hardware merchant, and Sidney Gregg, a local merchant, all came across the same entity, and all said they smelled a noxious odor. They all fired upon the beast, not affecting it at all. After days of being visited by the strange bird or bat-like thing, the men decided to round up a mob. They gathered with their firearms and ventured to the town's abandoned mine, where the monster reportedly was. When they arrived, they found the Van Meter visitor and a second visitor that was about half the original size. The men of Van Meter fired away. Just as previous attempts, though, the gunfire did nothing to stop the beast, and the visitor and its quote-unquote son went down the mine shaft. Wasting no time, the miners set to work barricading the mouth of the mine. Since then, there have been sporadic sightings of the visitor, including within the past few years. Local lore often fades away, especially when it is confined to such a specific area, but the Van Meter visitor is more famous now than ever before. There is an annual Van Meter Visitor Festival held every September in the monster's hometown, an event for fans of the paranormal and interested community members alike. The festival includes a walking tour of the supposed path, of the creature. The family and friends of 15-year-old Savannah Bright are still trying to piece together what happened the night she died. Bright was on the trestle with friends on May 29th when a train hit her and another girl. She was pronounced dead at the trestle. Stories of how and why Bright got on the platform that night differ from person to person, but her family and friends all say the same thing. Bright was there for everyone, even to her detriment. Every room she walked into, she lit up, her friend Juliana said. I think it makes a lot more sense why her last name is Bright. She made my life bright. Bright's father, Tommy, echoed her friend's sentiment. When he heard what happened that night, he rushed to the trestle, a place he told his daughter to stay away from about a year earlier. Hugh McCormick, the manager of special investigations for the Railroads Police Department, said the area is one of the only places he knows that has an alluring angle to it. I can't think of another area. It's something you have to say, special to the Louisville area, where it's become such a story that they want to follow it, McCormick said. They have to realize they can't come on private property to search for anything. The only way to be on private property is for us to score in. The legends have turned the area into a site for legend tripping. There have been a number of deaths and accidents at the trestle since its construction, despite the presence of an 8-foot fence to keep thrill seekers out. There is a common misconception that the trestle is abandoned and no longer used. In reality, the bridge carries a major rail artery into Louisville. Heavy freight trains cross the bridge several times daily, so it isn't easy for someone to get caught atop while an oncoming train barrels down on them. Norfolk Southern Railway urged citizens not to climb the trestle, saying if caught, they would be arrested. The Pope-like monster, or more commonly, colloquially, the Goatman, appears as a human-goat hybrid with a grotesquely deformed body of a man. It has powerful, fur-covered goat legs, an alabaster skin face with an aquiline nose and wide-set eyes. Short, sharp horns protrude from its forehead, nestled in long, greasy hair that match the color of the fur on its legs. It is reported to live beneath a railroad trestle bridge over Pope Lick Creek in the Fisherville neighborhood of Louisville, Kentucky. There are numerous urban legends that exist about the creature's origins and the methods it employs to claim its victims. According to some accounts, the creature uses either hypnosis or voice mimicry to lure trespassers onto the trestle to meet their death before an oncoming train. Other stories claim the monster jumps down from the trestle onto the rooftops of cars passing beneath it. Yet other legends tell us that it attacks its victims with a blood-stained axe, and that the very sight of the creature is so unsettling that those who see it while walking across the high trestle are driven to leap off. Other legends hold that the monster is a human-goat hybrid, and that it was a circus freak who vowed revenge after being mistreated. In one version, it is said that the monster escaped after a train derailment on the trestle. Another version, commonly told by locals of the area, claims that the monster is really the twisted, reincarnated form of a farmer who sacrificed goats in exchange for satanic power. Filmmaker Ron Schildknecht said that he created the film, The Legend of the Pope-like Monster, to explore and celebrate the folklore, which he said was unique to the city of Louisville. Despite differing descriptions and stories of the monster, Schildknecht said that there were common themes throughout every telling. There are some main elements: half man, half goat, the trestle, an imposing structure, and there was the initiator and the initiated, someone trying to scare their friend or their girlfriend, Schildknecht said. While Schildknecht said that the origin of the legend was never clear, one thing is, people have lost their lives on the trestle. There are several reports of trespassers in the area, and by the time the film debuted, 2 people had died, and more recently, a 15-year-old girl was killed when she was hit by a train on the trestle. People that have experienced those horrible tragedies, their friends and family, left behind to tell the story. It's devastating. In April of 1994, Brian Canfield was driving home one night through the backwoods of Pierce County, Washington. He was miles from civilization when suddenly his car froze in place. Canfield tried to start the engine several times, but the old pickup refused to come to life. He was on the verge of getting out to take a closer look when something swooped across his headlights. At first, he assumed it must have been some large bird. His hand was on the door handle when the monster landed on the vehicle's hood. Canfield described the creature as standing 9 feet tall, with a bat's face and wings attached to a blue-furred humanoid body. He noted the large fangs in the creature's mouth, glowing red eyes. This is what Canfield reported in an interview to the News Tribune in Tacoma, Washington in 1994. It was standing there staring at me like it was resting, like I didn't know what to think. I was scared. It raised the hair on me. I didn't feel threatened. I just felt out of place. It's looking right at me like in a deep stare, like right through me. It's standing perfectly still. It stood for, how long? A few minutes, several minutes. Then its fingers twitched. Its wings began to unfold. Those wings were as wide as the road. It turned its head and looked back at me and started flapping its wings. A few minutes later, the truck just started. I took off as fast as I could. A possible second sighting was reported in 2009 near Mount Shasta in California. Several hikers witnessed a huge creature with leathery wings spanning 50 feet flying out of a crevice in the mountain. At first, an eyewitness described the creature as having a head similar to a pterodactyl. However, upon reconsideration, the witness claimed it was more akin to a flying fox bat. In June 2011, Phoenix Tiraz, that's a pseudonym, was in his yard walking his dog. He went to pick up the dog when he saw something in the sky. He said the following: "I saw something flying in the sky. It had bat wings, blue fur, and had a face similar to eyes glowing red. It was about 9 feet tall at the least. After I watched, it just flew away." On April 14, 2014, at Archbishop Hoban High School in Akron, Ohio, a second period Spanish class spotted a giant black mass zip by the window of the classroom at incredible speed. The class claims it was about 9 feet tall with a 20 to 30 foot wingspan. The Batsqautch is a flying cryptid that was allegedly seen near Mount St. Helens in the 1980s. It resembles a flying primate similar to the ahul or the orang-bati of Southeast Asia. Its name is a portmanteau derived from the word bat and Sasquatch. This creature is said to have yellow eyes, a dog-like muzzle, blue fur, sharp teeth, bird-like feet, and leathery bat-like wings that span up to 50 feet. In addition, Batsqautch is said to be about 9 feet tall and has the ability to affect car engines. Batsqautch being a more relatively new cryptid, just like Chupacabra, although it doesn't have as much infamy as the Chupacabra. This is one that I barely heard about. I think in like maybe the mid 2000s when the Animal Planet used to have like I think it was like Animal X or something, or like when they were really getting into like pushing like cryptids and really getting away from being the Animal Planet. They had a segment on the Batsqautch. It was basically the same thing, where probably pretty much the same story. I think it was where, it landed and like the car shut off, and you saw this like large imposing figure with bat wings that spanned all across, and then it like I don't know, growled or lashed out at him, and then got to flapping and flying away, and then his car engine started. I don't think there's been too many sightings. I think more common people see like the Mothman other places, not so much the Batsqautch. In 1893, newspapers reported the discovery of a Hodag in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. The articles claimed that the Hodag had the head of a frog, the grinning face of a giant elephant, thick short legs set off by huge claws, the back of a dinosaur, and a long tail with spears at the end. The reporters were instigated by well-known Wisconsin land surveyor, timber cruiser, and prankster Eugene Shepard, who rounded up a group of local people to capture the animal. The group reported that they needed to use dynamite to kill the beast. A photograph of the remains of the creature's charred body was released to the media. It was the fiercest, strangest, most frightening monster ever to set razor-sharp claws on the earth. It became extinct after its main food source, all white bulldogs, became scarce in the area, Shepard claimed. He also claimed to have captured another Hodag in 1896, and this one was captured alive. According to Shepard's report, he and several bear wrestlers placed chloroform on the end of a long pole, which they worked into the caves of the creature, where it was overcome. He displayed this Hodag at the first Oneida County Fair. Thousands of people came to see the Hodag at the fair or at Shepard's display in a shanty at his house. Having connected wires to it, Shepard would occasionally move the creature, which would typically send the already skittish viewers fleeing the display. As newspapers locally, statewide, and then nationally began picking up the story of the apparently remarkable living creature, a small group of scientists from the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. announced they would be traveling to Rhinelander to inspect the apparent discovery. Their mere announcement spelled the end, as Shepard was forced to admit that the Hodag was a hoax. The Hodag became the official symbol of Rhinelander, Wisconsin. It is the mascot of Rhinelander High School and lends its name to numerous Rhinelander area businesses and organizations, including the annual music festival, Hodag Country Festival. The City of Rhinelander's website calls Rhinelander the home of the Hodag. A larger-than-life fiberglass sculpture of a Hodag, created by Tracy Goberville, a local artist, resides on the grounds of the Rhinelander Area Chamber of Commerce, where it draws thousands of visitors each year. Rhinelander Ice Arena houses two Hodags, one a full-body creature just inside the entrance, and the other one an oversized head that blows smoke and has red eyes that light up, located in the corner of just off the ice, which was created by the same artist who designed and built the Chamber Hodag. I wanted to include the Hodag just as a way to show, like, hey, I'm going to cover ones that are proven to be hoaxes, as well as ones that are proven to know that we don't have all the evidence for, so that you can see that I'm not trying to be biased. I'm not trying to be like, hey guys, all these cryptids are still cryptids, are all unknown. Some of them are hoaxes. Some of them, like this, where it was plain from just reading the story. I know back then probably people would be like, oh, like, but like when someone tells you that like it went extinct because it's the main food source, all white bulldogs, which are not even native to the U.S. So like just believing that is kind of a little ridiculous in and of itself. Because back then it would like widely not be known that those types of dogs are not from the U.S. or North America. Or maybe it would. I have a feeling that it probably would, especially from people who were originally from England. I wonder if, well, because this is Wisconsin, I think a lot of Germans settled there. But either way, you know, I feel like it feels a little fanciful to begin with. And like just everything that they said about it, about the bear wrestlers, about the chloroform, everything just kind of smells fishy. So now it's time to wrap up these cryptids. 5 more cryptids added to our list. What are these things we see? Are they animals that escaped for long enough that we can call them hidden? Or do we take the stories of these creatures as truth? Gorillas and platypuses were thought to be myth, but we do have more evidence than just like anecdotal tales. Maybe they are more extraterrestrial or dimensional than we think, phasing out of reality or traveling back to the places they come from. Whatever these hidden animals are, we know they keep popping up. There are multiple sides to every story, and even if the explanation is something mundane, there are so many things out there that we still don't know and will remain unknown. So remember to keep your eyes open and check every shadow. Now we get into some terrifying tales to chill you to the bone. Our first story is called Like an Animal Learning to Talk. I've told this story before, but here it goes. This is Spring, Texas in 2008. I just graduated high school and it was the summer before college. I was working at a local pizza joint that delivered until 3 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. We got an order out 5 minutes before closing in the rural area at least 25 miles away. I offered to do the delivery because the customer promised a $20 tip and I needed the money. It took me almost an hour to find the place, so almost 4 a.m. My boss said I could drive straight home after the delivery. This house had no neighbors. It was smack dab in the middle of the woods. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was all the lights were off and the front door was wide open. I approached the door and knocked even though it was open. No answer. Knocked again. Still no answer. Finally I shouted, "Johnny's Pies." I heard a voice say something, but I couldn't make it out, so I entered the lightless house. Stupid, I know. I walked in and said it again, "Johnny's Pies." The voice was louder, but still couldn't make it out. But I could tell it was coming from upstairs. I approached the stairs, but I wasn't about to go up in a stranger's house. I said, "I'm leaving it on the stairs." At this point, I don't give a fuck about the tip. I just want to go home. The voice said, "No, bring it upstairs." Only it wasn't a normal voice. I don't know how to describe it, but it sounded like an animal learning how to talk. Think Scooby-Doo, but not funny or cute. I politely said it was against company policy, not sure where I got that, and turned to head out. The person upstairs started stomping in anger and demanded I come upstairs. The stomping sounded heavy, like a horse or something. I bolted back to my car and drove off. My car was a piece of shit. I only made it about 200 feet before the car stalled. I panicked and tried to get it going again. Thank God it did. As I was driving off, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw what looked like a tall, skinny, lanky man standing in the road by the house. I quit the next day. Which, honestly, is what I would probably do after that encounter. I'd be like, I'm not doing, well, one, even if I stayed, I would be like, not doing those on Fridays or Saturday nights anymore. Doesn't matter what kind of tip they're offering. And then it's just weird that it's like, yeah, like the voice was like, oh, kind of like an animal learning how to talk or something. Crazy. Like, you always like hear people say that and like, or you read that in like novels and stuff. But like, what, I wonder what it like sounds like, and like what could it have been? Like, maybe, I mean, he said he saw like a tall lanky man, but what could it have just been? Like his like voice was like sore or something, or throat was like sore or something. I don't know. Like, that's kind of weird. The next story is called 3 Stories. So to this day, I don't know if any of these experiences actually happened, if it was a product of a child's over-imagination, dreams, or what. But I have 3 experiences that have stuck in my memory for all these years. The first, I must have been around 5 or 6. I was in a department clothing store shopping with my mom, the kind that doesn't really have a ceiling, just the support beams. Anyways, I was standing next to my mom in the checkout line. I looked up and I see a humanoid baboon-looking creature sitting on top of the support bars. We kind of just look at each other for a few seconds before he makes a shushing motion with his hands on his lips. I look at my mom to see if she's looking at this thing, and when I look back, the thing is gone. The second experience, I was around the same age. I was lying in bed trying to fall asleep, and I hear my door open. I assume it's my mom to be checking on me if I'm asleep. I squint my eyes open to see if it's her, and I see a silhouette of a person with a head the shape of Dee Dee from Rugrats. She stands in my doorway for a couple of moments, staring at me before leaving and closing the door behind her. I fell asleep soon after. The third experience, I was around 4 years old and I had woken in the middle of the night needing water or something like that. I walked down the hall to my parents' bedroom to wake up my mom. I tap her once, but she doesn't wake up. I look at the plastic blinds that are pulled down over the windows, and the bottom of it starts to slowly open and close on their own. I frantically tap my mom some more until she wakes up and the blinds stop moving. Anyways, thinking back on all these makes me feel uncomfortable. Yeah, no, I think I know what he means by, or they mean by, whether or not these stories actually happen to them, if they're kind of like something they imagine or their dream. Because there's always things that I'm like, was that a memory, or is that a dream of a memory, or is that like me trying to me dreaming, thinking it is a memory? And I don't know, like the baboon thing, like that's kind of creepy, honestly, if you looked up. I remember when I worked at Toys R Us, one morning, because I used to come in the mornings to like help reset things, and I also did the ad. But one morning we had an owl inside the store, and if anyone who knows anything like Mexican or like Hispanic lore, like owls, and I think that's just kind of lore for like any, I think also here in America, like indigenous people too, but like owls are supposed to be like witches and a bad sign. And I remember my friend, he said that, he was like, oh yeah, like, ooh, like it's like something bad is gonna happen because there was an owl inside the store. Kind of creepy, though. Like, it was just there, hanging around. The next tale is called Bobby. I never felt alone when we moved into our house about 6 years ago. I don't often like to think about paranormal stuff because I don't want it to manifest. I decided I was going to call the spirit Bobby so I wouldn't be scared as much and could laugh at the name when I told stories about him. I told my mom about him, and she's a very spiritual and knows more about this stuff than me, and explained how I pictured him and asked her what she got. I never felt he was evil, but he wasn't good either. I mainly saw him in my room. I'd wake up at night out of a dead sleep because I could feel his presence. He mostly just stared at me with his arms crossed in the middle of my room. I don't actually see him, more like I have an image in my head of him. My mom told me that I should tell him not to go into my room the next time I feel his presence. He's woken me up 3 times. I've told him to leave each time, and after a moment I can feel him leave, and then I go back to sleep. 3 days prior to the scary moment, I had been telling my mom and aunt about the other 2 women spirits in the house that visited. This is where I felt that I might have manifested him. I talked about paranormal stuff and read spiritual books for the next 2 days. On the 3rd day, I fell asleep like normal, and I woke up to him again and told him to leave. I was really tired, so I wasn't paying attention to if he actually left. No, I sleep with the blindfold on and a pillow on top of my head. I had just closed my eyes and was drifting off to sleep when I felt the corner of my bed dip. I froze. The first half second, I felt the bed dip a little. I thought it was my cat. But it dipped down too far, and there were no other paw imprints. Also, my cat knows how to open my door, but I had it closed that night, and I always wake up when someone opens my door. So after that half second, I realized it was not her or a family member. My back is turned to it, so I'm freaking out because I can't see, but I was too scared to take the blindfold off. After about 10 minutes of telling Bobby to leave in my head, I gathered the courage to say it out loud and ripped the blindfold off my head before backing up into the headboard. My door is closed and my cat isn't in the room, nor anyone else. I immediately start crying and send my mom a text to come into my room. I was too scared to get out of bed, and I had to wait a bit for her to come because our Wi-Fi is shit. When she does come, though, I start crying again and tell her what happened. Since then, I haven't had anything else paranormal happen. I think it's because I'm avoiding talking about it or watching scary videos of it. And yeah, that does happen where, so for some people, it only manifests when you start thinking about it, when you start talking about it. For others, you'll go long spats without having anything, without seeing anything, and then all of a sudden, bam, something will happen, something strange will happen, a sound, a feeling, a presence, a shadow here or there. But then for other people, it just constantly happens, it just constantly, until either they leave, or they do something, or they tell it to leave, or, that's all you gotta do. You gotta just let it know that, like, it's not welcome. Not all the time, because sometimes it's more malevolent than that. But for at least the beginning, you should be telling whatever. Like, maybe if they, like, took your remote and you can't find the remote. Like, that's one thing that happened before to in my family, where we couldn't find something, and, like, we're like, please just give it back, whatever it is. We just want it back. And then next thing you know, they turn around and there it is. There's the item that they were looking for. Just weird like that. The next story is called The Fifth Floor. When I was 9, I was taking a ride back home from school. It was a regular Friday in the middle of autumn, and I was coming back from a performance we did in the theater room. I came back home and I was pretty tired from all that practicing, so I finished up my work and went to bed. I lived in a small apartment with my parents and younger brother back then. So basically, I lived on the 4th floor. The 5th floor of the apartment always kept on making some weird noises whenever I go to bed. I always heard people calling my name or constantly stopping me on the floor as if sending a message. And that night, I had enough. There were noises that were more than enough to make me go crazy. I heard loud dripping and muffled screaming from up. I told my mother that I kept hearing weird sounds from the 5th floor neighbors, and she was like, "Honey, it's just your imagination. Don't worry about those. It's probably your friends at school saying scary things to you and you believing them. We can ask the neighbors to stop." So the next morning, we rang the doorbell of the 5th floor. No one answered the door. We tried again multiple times, but no one answered. To my surprise, my mother started banging on the door. That was unexpected, since she was a very calm person. Screaming my neighbors' names. "Michelle! Daniel! Answer the door!" She kept on shouting. We both couldn't wait anymore, so we busted the door down with their stone deer near the elevator. The whole house was empty and quiet. I could barely hear something in one of the rooms, like shuffling feet. We searched the rooms, and on the 2nd floor of the hallway, the noise became louder, so my mother opened the door, holding one of the kitchen knives. I saw Daniel. I didn't see Michelle. I only saw a faint figure tied up to a chair, screaming with a gag in her mouth. Daniel was shirtless. I didn't know why at the time. It was autumn, so obviously the weather was cold and the window was open so the air would come inside and freeze him. Daniel was on his knees, looking up at the figure. He noticed us and immediately began chasing us. Luckily, I used to take gymnastics, so I ran quickly and my mother distracted him. She locked him in his bathroom, and we started to look around the room he was in. I don't know why Michelle wasn't home, because she was my favorite neighbor. She always visited me to play with me. My mother turned on the bedroom light, and I saw Michelle tied to a chair with her clothes off. The whole room was stained with blood, and Michelle had huge cuts, scars, and bruises all over her body. My mother figured out what was happening and took her to the hospital. We reported Daniel to the police, but they did nothing. That was quite literally the most brutal experience of my life. I'm wondering if they're sure that, like, nothing happened to that guy, because, like, there's a lot of evidence there of him not only kidnapping, but holding someone else hostage, and then also, like, the cuts, the bruises, the scars, the blood everywhere. I feel like that's enough to, like, charge him with something. I don't know. I'm pretty sure, like, they got their story wrong with that, because, like, I feel like that's enough evidence for you just to walk in and be like, yeah, he did something bad. I mean, unless it's wherever they were, it was really that corrupt, where they're just like, well, it's just him and his wife, and they got into some trouble with a woman, and we're just gonna let him go. Weird, but, like, crazy. That would be crazy to see something like that happen. Next up is Black Stickman Phenomenon. I had some experiences as a child that I would consider paranormal. After my teenage years, I never really opened up about them to people because of how crazy it sounds. It wasn't until several years ago that I started researching on the internet and found I wasn't alone in seeing these strange creatures. I know it might sound silly to some, but this was what I experienced. When I was growing up, I had a best friend who lived down the street. We lived in a quiet, small town where her dad was always working. I would walk to her house every day after school, and we would often take walks. Walk to the liquor store to buy candy, etc. I would often see a stick man following us, peeking out from behind her couch, etc. He was all black and changed sizes, sometimes the size of a small cat, other times taller than a normal-sized man. I felt very scared of him and felt he was mischievous at best, perhaps evil. I finally got the courage to tell my best friend, and she admitted to seeing him too. I always got the feeling he was the same one every time, not different stick men. One time he appeared in the shape of a stick figure horse, like a bad child's drawing. I always believed him to be somehow following me and watching me, until when my best friend passed away suddenly our senior year of high school. She had a genetic heart condition that nobody, including herself, had known about. I've never seen what we called stickmen ever since. I believe now perhaps he was some form of Grim Reaper waiting his time to take my friend. I don't know if that's really the case, but it seems odd the sightings of him disappeared after she passed. Yeah, that is kind of weird that, like, she stopped seeing it altogether when her friend passed. Maybe it was something like that. Maybe something following them. I've never heard... I think I might have heard something about stickmen or something, but this is the first time I think for sure, like, hearing about this. It would be crazy to see a stick figure, like a badly drawn stick figure horse in real life. I think it'd be one of those things that would just drive your mind, like, crazy. I always talk about, like, if you saw, like, something, even if it's ridiculous in real life, like Killer Clowns from Outer Space, right? That's the one I love. Like, bringing up, like, if you saw one of those things in real life, I'm pretty sure your brain would short circuit and you wouldn't know what to do. You would go crazy. You scream. You like, you know what I mean? Like, your brain would not be able to process this thing in real life. And I feel like it would be kind of the same thing, but luckily she was a kid, and I feel like it's kind of the thing with, like, It, where, like, the novel It, where as you get older, you know, seeing these things would drive you crazy as an adult. And it does. It drives them because it's like, but, like, kind of like seeing something that shouldn't be there. Like seeing like a something from, like, Cthulhu or H.P. Lovecraft, you know, just the sight of it drives you crazy. But, like, as a kid, because your whole imagination plays into it, and you're like, oh yeah, of course monsters are real, of course dragons are real, of course dinosaurs are real. They look like this, they look like that, oh, a werewolf looks like that, oh, the killer clowns look like this. So your mind wouldn't necessarily short circuit then, but, like, as an adult, because you've been trained to be more rational about what the things are that you see, when you do see something that's, like, abnormal, your brain just breaks down. I don't know. Kind of creepy. Next up, we got Figure in the Road. Not my experience, but my cousin had a terrifying experience on a country road around 2 a.m. She worked nights as a community nurse and would often take this particular route to save time. It was quite an isolated road with no lights, no nearby houses, just farmland on one side and the edge of the moors on the other side. Now, it was rare to see another car on this road, let alone a pedestrian, and my cousin was surprised to see a figure standing halfway down this road. She described this figure as leaning towards the fence with their back to the road and wearing a long cloak or coat. She decided to pull over to see if this person needed help. But as soon as she got out of the car, the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. It was pitch black outside, and she could hear someone crying, but couldn't see anything. So she grabbed her torch and shown it towards the sound of the crying. As soon as the light hit the crying figure, the person turned their head towards my cousin, and they had no face. Terrified by this point, my cousin jumped straight back into her car and drove to the next village. She rang the police to let them know she had seen a girl by the side of the road who may need help. Incidentally, her colleague had been 5 minutes behind her and confirmed he hadn't seen anyone on this road. I was telling my mother the above story, and she knows of another encounter. Her friend was walking along this road one night. She had been at a neighboring party but had missed the late bus. Not wanting to spend the night, she decided to take the shortcut home across the road. She was accompanied by her husband and had a torch to see the way. Halfway down the route, they could hear crying on the other side of the road. She turned her torch towards the crying and saw a cloaked figure with no face. They immediately ran all the way home, never once looking back. I wonder if maybe somebody had died on the road, and maybe they were walking back, like the in the second story, where they're walking and maybe got hit by a car, or maybe that's why they're crying, because they're trying to figure out what happened to them, or maybe that's why they appear, or maybe it's kind of like the the woman in white, when they pick her up and then they get to the cemetery and she just disappears, something like that. I feel like each kind of region or area or country has its own kind of story of the woman in white. You kind of go from there this, and then La Llorona, those kinds of stories are kind of similar. They're not the same. I mean, obviously this one is kind of similar to La Llorona, because they're crying. This figure cloaked is crying for some reason, and then but they have no face. She has a face, but it's a hideous face. So it is a little bit different like that. But she did say it's near the moors too. So I'm wondering maybe something happened there, and it's a figure that died on the moors or something. Who knows, right? Maybe somebody should look into this area and see the history. Maybe something happened there, and so now it's some hauntings are just reverberations of something terrible that happened, and maybe that's what it is. Our last story is called Death. As a kid, I've had the most experiences, and I will share the one that I remember as being the most haunting. There was a period in my really young life that every night at around the same time, I would wake up and I had to wait a few seconds, but then a figure who looked exactly like how death is dressed would enter my room, just with no face under his hood at all, and it was all dark. This figure would enter my bedroom and walk straight towards my bed, just entering the room, stepping around a corner, and walk really, really slowly until it was out of my sight and it would be gone. Now I could make it go away if I found out whenever I closed my eyes, he would be gone instantly as well. This went on for a couple of weeks, I believe, and it became a routine for me to just deal with it and go to sleep again. But my parents' negative attitude got on my nerves, and they thought I was either faking or just in a nightmare phase. I can remember being angry at death because he woke me up every night, and my parents told me just do something about it. So I slept with the baseball bat that I got from my grandpa. This is where it gets intense for me, and I'm sweating just remembering all this. I woke up, turned myself towards the door like always, and the figure didn't enter my room. I waited for a bit, and then I got up to go to the bathroom because I was curious about what was happening for it not to enter my room. My room was connected to my parents' room. When I walked back from the toilet, I saw the figure from the back entering my room, and I immediately had the feeling that he would not like the fact that I was not there. I woke up both my parents, and they didn't believe that this new kind of story, and walked me to my bed angry. I got in bed and didn't want to face the door. I don't think a minute even passed for my father saying goodnight and closing the door, and me having a really bad feeling all of a sudden. I heard it enter my room, and I decided I needed to fight or scream. I did a combination of both. The baseball bat actually broke the glass in the door because I threw it hard, and blind. My parents were furious, and I felt really confused and stupid. The next night, I had a feeling that it would be over, and I went to bed without being afraid and thinking I would just close my eyes and I could be back to sleep fast. When I saw him enter my room at the same time, as always, there was a big difference immediately because he had my grandpa's face. I was shocked. I closed my eyes fast, and a lot of times I could still see him just standing there in the doorway, looking in. I was afraid, but I still got out of my bed. I walked up to it, and it was like seeing a taller version of my grandpa with weird dark clothes on. I told myself, what if I just kept looking directly at it and called for help? It had never reacted to me ever in all those visits. The moment I screamed for my dad, it changed from looking in the distance to this really loud laughing at me straight in my face. It was the last time I saw it ever, and it was not my grandpa. His mouth was non-human, and his smiling when laughing was extremely evil, but also sad. My grandpa died later that year. Later on in life, I learned that he went peacefully with the euthanasia process because he had multiple bad tumors. It kind of all made sense for me then, but I never really talked about it with my family. Whenever I meet someone who believes in the paranormal, I tell this true story about me. Yeah, that's weird. That's kind of creepy to just keep seeing death like that over the course of nights and nights, right? Just seeing it just every night like that. That reminds me of if anyone ever listened to Bizarre States or watched Nerdist back in the day, because Jessica Chobot used to be one of the hosts on there and the host on Nerdist, and she told the story about how she used to have a dream about death coming to her in her house and beckoning her outside, and at one point she almost went outside but she didn't, and she feels like if she had, she would have died. It's crazy, really crazy. But yeah, no, this is kind of creepy too, and that took the form of your grandpa. That's kind of sad, but at least it didn't do anything malicious while it was your grandpa, so that's good. At least it didn't sully your grandpa's memory or anything like that. Thank you all for listening. Hopefully your summer's still good and you're managing in the heat. It's been above 110 for the past couple weeks here in Arizona, so it's been pretty abysmal. Please, if you like what you hear, subscribe and you get every new episode downloaded. Do you have any strange, mysterious, or unexplained stories? Are they true? Did you craft a story yourself? We love to read your stories, and you can email them to horrorboxpodcast@gmail.com. We'd also like to post these stories on our socials, on Instagram, Threads, or TikTok at horrorboxpodcast, where we also have updates and news. One last thing. If you like the podcast and would like to support the podcast, buy me a coffee. You can buy me a coffee at coffee.com/horrorboxpodcast. It would really help out. We'll see you next time and hear what comes out from the horror box.